Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Keymaster episodes on OT certificate. I'm Sven, and today I've got my friend that flew in from France.
Hello, I'm Guillaume. I'm French, like Sven said. I'm a veteran of 30 years in the industry. I've started working in August 95. And I've been with Keyfactor for 3 years now.
Wow, that is a long time in the industry.
Yeah, you can see that.
So what is an OT environment?
Oh, an OT environment is very different from ID because the priority for OT is availability of the tools. So you don't want to disrupt any process. So it's not as much security rather than availability of the processes, physical security of the persons when some process may be dangerous for the workers. And the priority is not to patch and patch and patch and patch. I think that when you have something working, you want to keep it working and running.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, exactly.
So are certificates used there today? And if so, what kind of protocols are available in the OT world?
Oh, there are lots of field protocols. And what's really interesting when you think about certificates is that OT machinery has been evolving. So like 20 years ago, we were protecting the world of OT environments by physical security. So containing everything into a factory and basically nothing was communicating to the outside. It's not anymore true with Industry 4.0, where lots of machines communicate with the outside with cloud services, either owned by the factory itself or other corporation, or even the robot manufacturer itself has a special link into the robot, into his customer factory, where they can, monitor for predictive maintenance or services. So it means that all these machines need to have means of communicating, but also means of securing the communication.
And probably like an identity too these days?
Yeah, so it's exactly true. So it's funny because every component that's being manufactured for machines or even the machines themselves, they have an identity with an X509 certificate that is issued by the manufacturer, which is very often permanent, very long-lived, and which is here to prove the identity of that component, of that machine, and which helps unrolling that machine into the customer network, or maybe to secure.
But I guess that's today, though. But then with 30 years in the experience, there's obviously a lot of stuff still probably out there that doesn't even have a cert, right?
That's true. So yeah, when you average the number of years of machines and components in factories, you reach 30 years very easily. So what you do there is when you want to protect them, you proxy them behind machines that can have that kind of protection and certificates. And many protocols today, it's very interesting, allow for certificates usage, and even some use certificate lifecycle management. So I'm thinking of Modbus, Profinet, OPC UA, MQTT, and all the time-sensitive networking technology out there. So it means that the tools are there to be able to deploy certificates, and the manufacturers put certificates in there, and they're all expecting that the customers will use those certificates for something.
So identity certs are the important one that I see, but then there's probably a lot of other use cases in OT. So where does that spawn off of from the original burst cert that's issued to all the other certs that are probably used in an OT environment or need to be used for that matter?
Yeah, so that's used for authentication. So that initial cert will be used to enroll that new component, that new machine to the customer or the factory network. And of course, securing TLS connections.
So the network side?
Yes, on the network side and on the application side. So it can be two-level. I'm not sure every customer has that segmentation. And then, of course, it's certifications carried out to verify firmware signature, software signature. When you get a firmware update, a push into a machine or a component, you want to check the signature of that firmware to make sure that it's the genuine firmware coming from the manufacturer.
And I'm sure that's probably been a massive use case too, along with burst certs, that every manufacturer wants their code signed or data deliverable signed like that, so you can't counterfeit or...
Exactly. But the real thing we're seeing in this industry, and that's the bane of that industry, is the spread of the self-signed certificate. So imagine
the devil.
So you buy a component from a famous brand and you install that on your factory, And now that component has a certificate inside and maybe has an enrollment protocol available so that you can enroll your component into your PKI, into your network infrastructure.
Your operational at PKI, yeah.
What do? You know nothing because you're in the factory and they don't have the IT cybersecurity engineers. So even in the documentation of that component, you find a paragraph where it says, well, you can build a self-signed certificate and here's how you can do it on my component. And that's what most people do. So they end up with lots of self-signed certificates everywhere that need to be provisioned on the other end so that whatever that component or that machine talks to needs to have that self-signed certificate to be able to vet the connection. But honestly, it's a real mess and it's not doing the job. It's just bypassing security.
Which leads into the next question. What standards or support is there to use PKI in the OT world?
So it's not exactly PKI, but in Europe, the Cyber Resilience Act applies to the component manufacturers, for instance, and tells them that they should protect their components and that they're responsible for the cybersecurity of their components. And I guess that's the reason why they put certs inside in the first place, and they're absolutely right to do it. And on the operations side, I think it's more governed by the 62443-4-2, which says that industrial automation control systems need to be able to authenticate users and equipments very thoroughly. And I think that there's no better way today, state of the art, is by doing that with the help of X509 certs issued by a PKI, not self-signed certificates. So the industry is just growing and moving up to the right practice, but it takes time.
Where do you see the bigger demand then in OT with getting better PKI practices in place or the actual lifecycle management of certs, or both? Probably.
That's a very good point, because when you mention PKI to an OT engineer, very often he does not even know what that is.
It's Greek.
And what he needs is to provision certificates to make the component work, right? So if it's not a self-signed cert, it has to be a cert coming from something. But so usually he would, if he's very good, he would put a CSR into the system to get a certificate back from his IT PKI, and then manually provision it back into the machine. So I think that's where the CLM can help, because if you have a CLM tool, certificate lifecycle management, that can automate all the manual tasks that you would do as an OT engineer to set up an environment, to provision certificates into machine, and then you would even be able to monitor them, to audit your systems, and to renew them automatically. I think that's the real point, because with the CLM, you can script your manual industrial task, and you just abstract. Finally, you abstract the PKI, and I think that's what they're looking for.
Really, it's a bridge, because I guess a lot of the OT doesn't have support for protocol.
No,
unfortunately, it sounds like.
And it's segmented into many subnetworks. So even the protocols, you would have to make them go through all
like
those
a proxy or some other.
Yes.
Yeah.
So whereas if you have a CLM tool where you can deploy sub processes that go into those subnetworks that are non-intrusive into the equipment, because if you do that, you break the warranties.
Yeah.
So if you can deploy processes that can talk to those equipment, talk their language, and then report to a central system that will itself allow you to automate and connect to a PKI with several CAs, where you will be able to apply a corporate OT policy, I think that's the best use case.
Interesting. So it's definitely an interesting world, and that's our little flavor of OT and certificates, and we'll catch you in the next episode. Thanks, and take care.
Thank you.